February 14th, 2022. 6:47 a.m. Alaska Standard Time. The temperature at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson reads minus 19 degrees Fahrenheit. A thin skin of ice coats the tarmac. The Chugach Mountains to the east are invisible in the pre-dawn darkness. Two F-22 Raptors sit on the alert pad. Engines cold, pilots suited up and waiting. They have been waiting for 19 minutes. Then the radio crackles. NORAD has a contact. Multiple bogies, inbound from the northwest. Moving fast. Too fast for commercial traffic. Too fast for the routine bear bomber probes that the 525th Fighter Squadron has scrambled against dozens of times without incident. The crew chiefs yank the wheel chocks. The Pratt & Whitney F-119 engines roar to life in the Arctic darkness, each producing 0 pounds of thrust at full afterburner. Steam billows from the engine nacelles in the cold air. Ice crystals scatter across the tarmac. Dagger flight is airborne in under 4 minutes. What happens in the next 93 minutes will be classified secret/NOFORN for 3 years. The engagement summary will be buried inside a 1,000-page NORAD annual review document that no journalist will reach for over 2 years. The names of the pilots will be redacted in every released document. The Russian government will issue a flat denial within 48 hours. But the telemetry does not lie. The AWACS recordings do not lie. And the Norwegian intelligence intercepts that captured 2 Foxhound transponders going dark within 8 seconds of each other, at coordinates matching the U.S. Air Force after-action report exactly, do not lie either. This is the story of the first confirmed beyond visual range engagement between a 5th-generation American stealth fighter and Russia's fastest operational interceptor, a kill chain that lasted 4 minutes and 18 seconds. And a classified Arctic encounter that rewrote Pentagon doctrine for an entire theater of operations. To understand what Dagger 1 was flying into that February morning, you need to understand the machine he was flying. The F-22 Raptor is not a fighter jet in any conventional sense. It is a flying sensor platform that happens to carry weapons. Lockheed Martin and Boeing delivered the first operational Raptor to the Air Force in January 2005 at Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. The program cost $79.2 billion across its entire development and production run. Each airframe carries a flyaway cost of approximately $143 million, though the full program cost per aircraft, accounting for research, development, test, and evaluation amortized across the 187 aircraft produced, runs closer to $350 million per copy. The aircraft carries the ANG-77 active electronically scanned array radar as its primary sensor. In look-down mode against a target the size of a MiG-31, the APG-77 achieves and maintains solid radar track at ranges exceeding 90 nautical miles. In specific engagement geometries, particularly nose-on approaches where the target's own radar emissions provide passive cueing to the Raptor's ANLR-94 electronic warfare system, that effective detection range extends further still. The F-22's low observable airframe reduces its radar cross-section to approximately 0.0001 square meters in the frontal aspect. To put that in physical terms, a steel ball bearing the size of a marble returns more radar energy than a Raptor seen head-on. The opposing aircraft that February morning was the Mikoyan MiG-31BM Foxhound, Russia's premier high-altitude interceptor, a machine built for exactly one purpose: killing fast things in the stratosphere. The original MiG-31 design dates to the early 1970s. It was a direct response to the Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird. The Americans had built an aircraft that flew higher and faster than anything the Soviet Union could intercept, and Moscow needed an answer. Chief designer Mikhail Waldenberg led the team at OKB-155. What they produced was remarkable by any measure: a 2-seat interceptor powered by twin Saturn D-30 F6 turbofan engines, each generating 171 pounds of thrust at full afterburner, capable of reaching Mach 2.83 at altitude. Combat ceiling, 25,000 meters, well above most of the atmosphere. Maximum unrefueled range, 3,000 kilometers. The BM variant, introduced through a series of Russian Defense Ministry modernization contracts between 2006 and 2010, added critical upgrades, overhauled avionics suites, updated navigation and communications systems, and most critically, integration capability for the KH-47M2 Kinzhal aeroballistic missile, a weapon assessed by the Defense Intelligence Agency as capable of Mach 10, terminal velocity, and ranges up to 2,000 kilometers against fixed and naval targets. A MiG-31BM carrying Kinzhal missiles is not an interceptor. It is a strategic strike platform. It can reach out and destroy an American carrier strike group, an E-3 AWACS surveillance aircraft, or a coastal early warning radar installation from outside any currently operational intercept envelope. That capability transformed the Foxhound from a Cold War relic into a 21st century threat that demanded serious planning attention at every level of American air defense, which is why 3 days before the intercept, something flagged at Langley. A CIA SIGINT collection team monitoring communications traffic from Anadyr Air Base in Chukotka had noted a significant change in radio patterns. The volume of encrypted transmissions had increased by roughly 340% above baseline across a 72-hour window. The content analysis, partially revealed in the 2025 declassification package, was consistent with pre-mission planning cycles. Pre-flight weather analysis, fuel load calculation, aircraft maintenance status reviews, standard departure planning traffic. But the analysts also noted something specific in the weapons loadout discussions. The designation KH-47M2 appeared repeatedly. The 4 MiG-31BMs that departed Anadyr that February morning may have been carrying Kinzels. Confirmation was impossible from available intelligence. The imagery satellites were not in favorable orbital positions over Chukotka during the loading window. Human intelligence from inside the 712th Guards Aviation Regiment was thin. The possibility could not be confirmed. It did not need to be confirmed to change the response calculus entirely. The Zaslon radar, NATO reporting name, Flashdance, is the heart of the MiG-31BM's combat system. A phased orbit design, operating in the X and L frequency bands simultaneously, optimized for high-altitude intercept against fast maneuvering targets. Against a conventional fourth-generation fighter, an F-15, an F-16, even an advanced variant like the Block 70 F-16V, the Zaslon-AM provides detection ranges of approximately 180 to 200 kilometers. Against a large aircraft like a B-52, detection range can extend beyond 300 kilometers. Against an F-22 Raptor in the frontal engagement geometry, the Zaslon-AM's effective detection range drops below 15 kilometers. In certain approach angles, where the Raptor is closing from a specific azimuth that falls within the radar's antenna scan dead zones, that range may drop to single-digit nautical miles. There is a detection floor set by physics that software updates cannot move. The Russian pilots who launched from Anadyr that morning did not fully appreciate what that meant in practice. They understood it theoretically. They had been briefed on F-22 low observable performance. They had flown simulations against hypothetical fifth-generation threats. Simulations and reality are different things. The 4 MiG-31BMs departed Anadyr Air Base at 5:19 a.m. Anadyr local time, 3:19 a.m. Alaska Standard Time. The formation was designated Berkut in operational planning documents, recovered as part of the 2025 declassification. The Russian word means Golden Eagle. Call signs for the 4 aircraft, Berkut 1 through Berkut 4. Lead aircraft, Berkut 1, was commanded by Major Sergei Dmitriev of the 712th Guards Aviation Regiment, based at Anadyr, 37 years old. Over 200 documented hours in type on the MiG-31, regarded within the regiment as one of the most skilled Foxhound pilots in the VKS. An experienced professional at the top of his capabilities, the formation climbed to 21,000 meters and accelerated to Mach 1. 8 on their initial heading. That heading was northwest, a standard deceptive routing technique designed to complicate ground-based radar tracking and obscure the formation's true destination for as long as possible. 60 miles from Russian territorial airspace, all 4 aircraft executed a coordinated hard turn, east, directly east, aimed at the Diomede Islands. NORAD's E-3B Sentry AWACS aircraft, callsign Cowboy 11, had been orbiting over the Beaufort Sea since 4:30 a.m. on a routine surveillance mission. The E-3B carries the ANP-I-2 radar, a rotating phased array antenna 8 feet in diameter, capable of detecting and tracking aircraft at ranges over 250 miles at altitude. The operations compartment behind the cockpit houses 4 radar operator stations where trained analysts monitor the tactical airspace picture continuously. Technical Sergeant Alicia Harmon had been the senior radar operator on AWACS missions for 6 years. She had tracked hundreds of Russian military aircraft during that time, dozens of bear bomber approaches, occasional Su-27 flanker probes, a handful of MiG-31 transits along the Chukchi Sea coast that had turned back before reaching the Adige boundary. When the 4 MiG-31 contacts appeared on her scope at 6:28 a.m., she recognized the signatures immediately. What she did not recognize was the behavior. 4 contacts moving at Mach 1.8, all at 21,000 meters. In tight formation, 4-ship trail, 10-kilometer separation. That spacing is not used for training flights. Training flights spread wider for safety margins and deconfliction. Tight trail formation at Mach 1.8 is a combat approach profile, and their heading was aimed directly at the AWACS boundary, which they would reach in approximately 26 minutes at their current speed. Harmon flagged the contacts immediately. Her call to NORAD battle staff at Peterson Space Force Base in Colorado Springs was terse and precise. Peterson Command, Cowboy 11. 4 uniform tracks bearing a 30 from my position. Angel 70, speed 1.8, heading 090, hostile intent profile. Request battle staff. The call reached NORAD Commander General Glenn Van Herk at 6:33 a.m. Alaska time. He was already at his battle watch position, a standard precaution during elevated tempo periods, and the past week had qualified. Van Herk had 33 years of Air Force experience and had commanded NORAD since August 2020. He had watched Russian probing of the AWACS accelerate across his tenure. He had authorized intercept scrambles regularly. He had not previously authorized what he was about to authorize. He had 22 minutes before the Foxhounds crossed the AWACS boundary. He used 11 of them to build his picture. He queried DIA for anything current on the 7 and 12th Guards Aviation Regiment's operational posture. The answer was a 4-page brief that confirmed the regiment had been conducting elevated training tempo for 16 days. He queried NSA for corroborating SIGINT on the Anadir traffic spike flagged 3 days earlier. NSA confirmed the communications pattern remained consistent with pre-combat mission planning. He reviewed the Kinzhal threat assessment, updated the previous week, with its specific warning about MiG-31BM employment of the KH-47M2 against undersea cable infrastructure in the Bering Sea. There is a section of underwater fiber optic cable that connects Nome, Alaska to the broader Pacific Communications Network. It runs along the seafloor at coordinates roughly consistent with the Foxhounds' apparent target vector. At 6:44 a.m., General Van Herk authorized an upgrade to the intercept flight's rules of engagement. The phrase used in NORAD's operational playbook is specific and stark: intercept to engagement ready. In practice, it means the intercept flight is authorized to employ weapons against non-compliant intruders at the senior pilot's discretion without requiring real-time approval from the ground, if the intruders fail to respond to standard radio challenges on guard frequency. This authorization had been issued twice in NORAD's history, both times in the 1980s during Soviet-era incursions. Neither previous instance resulted in weapons employment. The ROE upgrade reached Dagger 1 at 6:43 a.m. Lieutenant Colonel James Whitfield, callsign Dagger 1, had been flying F-22s for 11 years at that point. He held 127 documented NORAD intercept missions. He had flown against Russian aircraft dozens of times, bears, flankers, and twice against MiG-31s that had turned back before any challenge sequence was required. He read the brevity code for the engagement authorization twice. Then he pushed his throttles to military power and climbed. The Bering Sea in February is not a hospitable place to conduct air-to-air combat. A low-pressure weather system, centered over the Pribilov Islands, had been building for 4 days. At 18,000 feet, sustained winds from the northwest were measuring 85 knots. Below 18,000 feet, solid instrument meteorological conditions, visibility near zero, tops extending all the way up to the 18,000-foot mark. Above 18,000 feet, clear Arctic air, unlimited visibility, temperatures of minus 60 degrees Celsius at the engagement altitude of 21,000 meters. The cloud deck complicated everything. Dagger flight was climbing below the deck at 15,000 feet, while Burkett formation operated above it at 75,000 feet. Direct visual contact was impossible. The engagement would be conducted entirely by sensor and data link, with no possibility of visual identification before weapons employment. For the Russian formation, the cloud deck had been a deliberate tactical choice. Russian VKS doctrine for encounters with American interceptors in contested airspace includes what planners call opacification routing, flight paths chosen specifically to maximize the engagement geometry's legal and political ambiguity. An aircraft formation operating above a solid cloud deck, visible only as radar contacts, maintains a level of plausible deniability in post-incident diplomatic exchanges that a formation visible at sea level does not have. The Foxhound pilots had chosen their altitude to exploit that ambiguity. It was sophisticated planning. It did not account for what was about to happen. At 6:51 a.m., Dagger 1 made his first radio transmission on guard frequency, International Emergency Channel 121.5 MHz, as required by ESAU protocol and NORAD standing orders. He transmitted in English, then repeated in Russian. Unknown aircraft, this is United States Air Force, bearing 310 from your position, Flight level 500. You are approaching a restricted air defense identification zone. Identify yourself immediately and state your intentions. Silence. Standard protocol required a 30-second wait between challenge transmissions. He waited. Unknown aircraft. This is United States Air Force on guard frequency. You are approaching restricted United States airspace. You are directed to alter course immediately. Respond on 121.5 or 243.0 megahertz. Silence from Burkett formation. Their Zaslon-AM radars continued scanning. Their IFF transponders continued broadcasting. They showed no sign of having received the transmissions, or if they had received them, no sign of intending to comply. At 6:53 a.m. and 41 seconds, Dagger 1's AN/ALR-94 passive electronic warfare system detected the Zaslon-AM radar emissions from Burkett 1 at Bering 347 degrees. The ALR-94 is the most sophisticated passive radar detection system ever installed on a production fighter aircraft. It covers a frequency range from 0.5 GHz to 18 GHz, measures angle of arrival with precision to within 0.3 degrees, and provides threat assessment in real time. It also feeds queuing data to the ANFG-77 fire control radar, allowing the Raptor to achieve track on a threat, using the threat's own emissions as a navigation beacon. The Foxhounds were actively searching for the Raptors using the Zaslon-AM. They had not found them. At 6:54 a.m. and 11 seconds, Lieutenant Colonel Whitfield's AFG-77 radar, operating in a low probability of intercept, interleaved pulse mode that significantly reduced its own. Detectability against the Zaslon-AM achieved solid track on Burkett 1. Range 87.3 nautical miles, he called it. Dagger flight, Dagger 1. Radar contact, Burkett 1, Bering 347, range 87, Angel 70+, speed 1.7, closing. Captain Marcus Chen, Dagger 2, was flying approximately 2 miles off Whitfield's right wing. His own APG-77 had achieved secondary track on Burkett 2 3 seconds earlier. He had waited for the flight lead. Dagger 2 confirms. Geometry good. I hold Burkett 2, Bering 349, range 89, matching altitude. Cowboy 11 updated the tactical picture from above the cloud deck. Dagger flight, Cowboy 11 confirms 4 contacts. Burkett 3 and 4 are trail 10-mile separation. Data link follows. The data link package arrived in Whitfield's cockpit display within 4 seconds. 4 contact icons, each tagged with altitude, bearing, speed, heading, and confidence level. The picture was remarkably clear for a beyond visual range engagement over one of the most remote stretches of ocean on the planet. He then received the AWACS brevity code confirming weapons-free authorization. Dagger flight, Cowboy 11, Yankee 2 Delta, your discretion. Put yourself in the cockpit of Dagger 1 for a moment. You have been airborne for 17 minutes. The temperature outside your aircraft is 60 below zero. The Bering Sea is under you, invisible under a cloud deck that extends in every direction. 87 miles in front of you, 4 of Russia's fastest combat aircraft are heading east, carrying a weapon system that could strike American ships or infrastructure from distances that offer no defense. You have radioed them twice. You have authorization to engage, and they still cannot see you. What do you do with the 11 seconds before you have to decide? Whitfield's cockpit data recorder captures those 11 seconds. He made 2 more radio calls. The transcripts show them rapid and direct. Unknown aircraft. Burkett formation, this is your final warning. Alter course immediately or you will be engaged. Silence. At 6:54 a.m. and 31 seconds, he selected his first AIM-120D. The AIM-120D, Advanced Medium Range Air-to-Air Missile, is the current American, standard for Beyond Visual Range Air Combat. Unit procurement cost in fiscal year 2022. $1.76 million per round. Weight, 335 pounds. Length, 148 inches. Warhead, 40-pound blast fragmentation design with active radar proximity fuse. Lethal radius, approximately 12 meters from detonation point. The guidance system is what distinguishes the D variant from its predecessors. Inertial navigation with GPS update throughout the mid-course flight phase, allowing the missile to navigate to a precise point in space where the launch aircraft sensors predict the target will be. At the terminal phase, typically the final 15 to 20 nautical miles, the missile's onboard active radar seeker transitions to autonomous guidance, broadcasting its own radar signal, and tracking the target independently. Critically, the D variant added a 2-way data link that allows the launch aircraft to continuously update the missile's target parameters throughout its flight. If the target maneuvers, the data link carries corrected intercept geometry to the missile in real time. This capability reduces the probability of a miss against a hard maneuvering target by approximately 40% compared to the earlier AIM-120C7. Dagger 1 held his weapons selector hot for 4 seconds, the required pre-launch confirmation sequence, then fired. Fox 3. Dagger 1, target Burkett 1. The AIM-120D separated from Dagger 1's left internal weapons bay. The bay door opened and closed in approximately 4 seconds, a design requirement to minimize radar cross-section exposure during the weapon's employment sequence. The missile's solid-fuel rocket motor ignited within milliseconds of separation. It accelerated through Mach 1 in under 2 seconds and was at Mach 4 before it was 3 miles from the launch point. Whitfield immediately turned 20 degrees left and began a shallow descent, putting the Raptor into a notch, a heading perpendicular to the Foxhound's radar scan pattern, minimizing his own radar return while maintaining the data link connection with the missile. Dagger 2 had already selected his weapon. Fox 3, Dagger 2, target Burkett 2. 2 AIM-120Ds in the air simultaneously. 2 Foxhounds in the crosshairs, 85 nautical miles distant, still closing at Mach 1.8, still scanning with their Zaslon-AM radars, still finding nothing. The time of flight for an AIM-120D against a target at 80+ nautical miles is not measured in seconds. It is measured in minutes. At average missile velocity through the engagement geometry, accounting for motor burnout and the gradual deceleration that follows in the thin, stratospheric air, the flight time to Burkett 1's position was approximately 2 minutes and 38 seconds. 2 minutes and 38 seconds, during which Cowboy 11 tracked both missiles on the ANP-2 radar, during which Dagger Flight held its notch positions, during which the Foxhounds continued east, closing the distance, the Zaslon-AM radars still active, still scanning, still finding nothing. What's most surprising about this engagement is not that the Raptors won. That outcome was theoretically predictable to anyone who had studied F-22 performance parameters against the Zaslon-AM detection geometry. What is surprising is how complete the sensor dominance was. Burkett formation was never aware, not for a single second of the engagement, that they were being tracked, targeted, and engaged by American aircraft they could not see, at approximately 63 nautical miles from Burkett 1's current position, some 25 nautical miles short of the AIM-120D's launch point. The missile received a data link update from Cowboy 11. Burkett 1 had made a slight heading change, turning approximately 5 degrees north. Minor, possibly routine navigation, possibly a reaction to turbulence. The update corrected the missile's flight path automatically. At 53 nautical miles, the AIM-120D from Dagger 1 transitioned to autonomous terminal guidance. The onboard active seeker illuminated. It began broadcasting its own radar signal against Burkett 1's airframe. Burkett 1's ANR-73 radar warning receiver detected the AIM-120D seeker emissions at 6:57 a.m. in 3 seconds. Major Sergei Dmitriev had at that point approximately 15 seconds. He reacted in the way a professional with over 2,200 hours in type reacts, immediately, aggressively, and by the book. He broadcast a single transmission on the formation frequency. The Russian words translate as missile. Break right. He deployed chaff. Metallized foil bundles cut to reflect radar frequencies across the AIM-120D's seeker band. He rolled 90 degrees right and pulled through the turn at approximately 8 Gs sustained, simultaneously engaging both afterburners and pushing into a diving break from 21,000 meters toward 13,000 meters. It was a textbook defensive maneuver. It failed. The physics of the engagement do not favor the defending aircraft at terminal guidance ranges below 15 nautical miles at closing speeds above Mach 5. The AIM-120D's pulse Doppler seeker discriminates between the target and chaff bundles by measuring velocity relative to ground speed. Chaff bundles, once released, decelerate rapidly from aircraft velocity to near zero. The seeker's Doppler processing identifies them as stationary clutter and filters them out. Burkett 1 was moving at approximately Mach 1, 9 when the break was initiated. The AIM-120D from Dagger 1 was moving at approximately Mach 3.8 at terminal guidance transition. Closing speed, roughly Mach 5.7. At Mach 5.7 closing, defeating an inbound missile through a break turn requires the defending aircraft to place a specific angular distance between itself and the missile's flight path within the missile's remaining time of flight. The geometry calculates unforgivingly. A MiG-31BM pulling 9 Gs, its structural limit at Mach 1.9 does not generate enough angular separation from an AIM-120D at Mach 3, 8 at terminal ranges below 12 nautical miles. At 6:57 a.m. in 14 seconds, Burkett 1's transponder stopped transmitting. The radar skin paint, the physical return from the airframe, disappeared from Cowboy 11's scope simultaneously. 8 seconds later, Burkett 2 went dark. Captain Marcus Chen's AIM-1 120D had found its target. Both aircraft went down over international waters at approximately 65. 2 degrees north, 168.1 degrees west, 220 miles west-southwest of Nome, Alaska. The water temperature at those coordinates on February 14th was approximately minus 1.8 degrees Celsius, just above the freezing point of seawater. At the engagement altitude of 21,000 meters, ambient air temperature was minus 60 Celsius. No ejection sequences were tracked by Cowboy 11's ANAPI-2 radar following either detonation. Burkett 3 and Burkett 4 had been trailing by 10 kilometers. They had their radar warning systems active. They had their data link receivers monitoring the formation frequency. When Burkett 1 and Burkett 2, two of the most capable aircraft in the Russian aerospace forces, commanded by experienced professional airmen, disappeared from scope within 8 seconds of each other, the tactical picture for the surviving pilots required no interpretation. Both aircraft lit afterburners simultaneously. Burkett 3 and Burkett 4 pulled into climbing turns, pushing through Mach 2.4, heading northwest toward Russian territorial airspace. They climbed through 23,000 meters, the MiG-31's operational ceiling, and held Mach 2.4 sustained. The 712th Guards Aviation Regiment's fastest remaining aircraft pushed to maximum sustained speed, running. Whitfield watched them go on his data link display. The rules of engagement authorized engagement against continued hostile incursion. The moment Burkett 3 and Burkett 4 turned away from the ADI's boundary and headed northwest, they were no longer conducting a hostile incursion. They were departing. The tactical calculus and the legal framework both pointed in the same direction. He let them go. Cowboy 11, Dagger 1. Splash 2, Burkett 1 and 2 down at coordinates Lima Foxtrot. Burkett 3 and 4 departing north, Angel 75 plus, speed 2.4. Not pursuing. Request recovery to JBER. Technical Sergeant Harmon acknowledged with the professional brevity of someone who had spent the last 2 minutes watching an engagement she would not be able to discuss for 3 years. Dagger flight, Cowboy 11. Splash 2 confirmed. Clear to the east, recovery approved. The engagement was over. Total elapsed time from Dagger 1's first weapons employment to the second splash, 4 minutes and 18 seconds. Counting from first radar, lock at 87.3 nautical miles, 4 minutes and 47 seconds. The Foxhounds had been in weapons release range for less than 90 seconds before the first shot. For the crews of Burkett 1 and Burkett 2, the entire engagement window, from first radar warning receiver alert to terminal impact, had lasted 11 seconds. Dagger flight turned east and began the descent toward Elmendorf. The Bering Sea returned to silence beneath an unbroken cloud deck. The classification process began before the wheels touched down. NORAD Battle Staff initiated Level 1 Information Control Protocol at 7:03 a.m., 11 minutes after Burkett 2 went dark. Level 1 restricts all engagement information to a strict need-to-know list maintained exclusively by the NORAD Commander's Office. No media contact. No congressional notification within the initial 48-hour window. No foreign partner sharing, including with Canada, despite Canada's co-command role in NORAD, pending specific authorization from the Secretary of Defense. The protocol exists because of a lesson learned after the 1989 downing of 2 Libyan MiG-23s over the Mediterranean by Navy F-14 Tomcats. That engagement became diplomatically complicated, partly because information reached journalists before a full strategic picture had been assembled. The Pentagon had since built deliberate information management protocols around classified air-to-air engagements, specifically to prevent premature disclosure from triggering diplomatic crises before the government was prepared to manage the consequences. This time, the strategic picture developing was more complicated than anything the protocol architects had originally contemplated. 2 Russian military officers were dead at the bottom of the Bering Sea. Their aircraft had been eliminated in international airspace by American forces without prior diplomatic warning. The engagement was legally defensible. At his approach, under hostile intent profile, 2 rounds of radio challenges on guard frequency, weapons-free authorization under active threat assessment, ROE compliance confirmed. The legal review, completed in the first 48 hours, would confirm that Dagger 1 and Dagger 2 had acted within their authorized rules of engagement. Legally defensible is not the same as diplomatically simple. The State Department was notified at midnight on February 15th. The Secretary of Defense was informed at 12:47 a.m. The President of the United States was informed at 1:15 a.m. The Russian government's response came 14 hours after the engagement. A statement issued through RIA Novosti state news agency, attributed to an unnamed Ministry of Defense spokesman. Reports of Russian aircraft losses in the Pacific region are categorically denied. All Russian Aerospace Forces aircraft have completed scheduled training exercises and returned safely to home bases. No mention of the Bering Sea. No mention of MiG-31s. No mention of Berkut Formation or the 712th Guards Aviation Regiment. No mention of 2 transponders that had gone dark simultaneously in international waters. From Moscow's perspective, the denial served multiple strategic functions simultaneously. It avoided a public admission that 2 of Russia's premier interceptors had been destroyed without inflicting any damage on the attacking force. It preserved diplomatic ambiguity for potential future use. It prevented the Russian public from learning that a costly and high-profile military capability had been demonstrated as decisively insufficient against American 5th-generation fighters. The cover-up was comprehensive. It was not comprehensive enough. Norwegian military intelligence had been operating Arctic Mirror, a passive signals intelligence collection program covering the Barents and Bering Sea regions since September 2019. The program runs through a network of subsurface acoustic sensors and passive radio frequency collection, receivers positioned at Svalbard and along the Norwegian Arctic coast. Arctic Mirror was established under a bilateral US-Norway intelligence framework, formalized following the 2018 Novichok poisoning in Salisbury, with a specific mandate to monitor Russian military aviation activity in the high North and North Pacific. On February 14th, Arctic Mirror logged the departure of Berkut Formation from Anadyr Air Base at 5:19 a.m. The program tracked all 4 aircraft throughout their transit east. At 6:57 a.m. and 14 seconds, Arctic Mirror's passive receivers recorded a simultaneous dropout of 2 Foxhound IFF Mode 1 military identification codes. Both codes went dark within 8 seconds of each other. The GPS coordinates of the dropouts: 65.2 degrees north, 168.1 degrees west. The coordinates matched the U.S. after-action report to the 4th decimal place. Norway shared the data through existing Five Eyes adjacent framework agreements within 4 hours. The Norwegian Forsvaret Etterretningstjeneste a formal assessment prepared at their facility in Kolsås and included in the 2025 U.S. declassification package was unambiguous. Available evidence confirms the loss of 2 Mikoyan MiG-31BM aircraft of the 712th Guards Aviation Regiment over international waters in the Bering Sea on February 14, 2022. Engagement time consistent with U.S. military reporting. Crew survivability assessed as nil. Russian government denial is not credible given available intercept data, and the confirmed return of only 2 aircraft to Anadyr Air Base at 8:34 a.m. local time. 2 aircraft departed Anadyr. 4 aircraft should have returned. 2 did. Sergei Surovikin, Commander-in-Chief of the Russian Aerospace Forces, convened an emergency internal review at VKS headquarters on Bolshaya Pirogovskaya Street, Moscow at 2 p.m. Moscow time on February 14th. The review focused on a single question: how had 2 MiG-31BMs been eliminated without the Zaslon-AM radar aboard the surviving aircraft, detecting the attacking force at any point during the engagement? The answer, derived from the radar logs of Berkut 3 and Berkut 4, was not ambiguous. A translated excerpt from the VKS internal review, rated by the Defense Intelligence Agency as having high confidence authenticity and included in the 2025 declassification package, states, analysis of Zaslon-AM operational data from Berkut 3 and Berkut 4 confirms 0 detection of hostile aircraft during the engagement period. First electronic warning received by Berkut 1 at range 53 nautical miles from inbound missile, consistent with AIM-120D seeker transition to terminal guidance mode. This outcome confirms that F-22A low observable characteristics in the frontal engagement geometry suppress Zaslon-AM detection below operationally meaningful ranges. Current high-altitude intercept doctrine requires bilateral detection as a prerequisite. That prerequisite cannot be assumed in any engagement environment where F-22A assets are present. Doctrine revision is required. In plain language, Russia's best interceptor could not see what eliminated it. The court transcripts and technical documentation from the 2025 declassification run to over 1,100 pages, and one detail kept coming back to me across all of it. In Lieutenant Colonel Whitfield's classified debrief, in the section labeled Personal Observations, the space where pilots are encouraged to record anything that does not fit neatly into standard after-action reporting formats, he wrote 4 sentences. 3.5 of those sentences were redacted in the 2025 release. What remains? I thought about during the return flight. What we accomplished today was tactically necessary and legally justified. The strategic consequences will take years to understand. I hope we chose correctly. The redacted portion of that first sentence has generated significant analysis among the researchers who have reviewed the full unredacted version inside the classified community. The most widely held interpretation, Whitfield was thinking about the Russian pilots. Two professional airmen, not political figures, not decision makers, but working military officers following their orders in the same way he was, following his, who were now somewhere at the bottom of the Bering Sea. The other interpretation, he was thinking about escalation dynamics, whether the demonstration of F-22 lethality in a live engagement, the first of its kind, would stabilize Russian behavior in the Arctic theater or trigger a response that made the strategic environment more dangerous. Those are not mutually exclusive thoughts for a man flying home from an engagement he knew would be classified and unknown to the world for years. What this tells us about fifth-generation air warfare. The performance gap between fourth-generation and fifth-generation fighters is not incremental. It is categorical. The F-22 did not defeat the MiG-31BM by being faster or more maneuverable, though in many parameters it is both. It defeated the Foxhound by being effectively invisible, until the moment the AIM-120D Seeker went active, and by that point, the outcome was already determined. Speed and agility are irrelevant when you cannot find the threat until the weapon is 12 nautical miles away, and accelerating at Mach 5.7. This is the uncomfortable reality of fifth-generation air power that a great deal of popular analysis continues to understate. It does not matter how good your radar is if the physics of low observable design mean that radar cannot detect the threat at a range, where defensive options still exist. Here is the take that will probably generate disagreement in the comments. Russia's official denial of the engagement was a strategic error of the first order, not because it fooled anyone. Norway had the SIGINT data within 4 hours. The United States had cockpit recordings, missile telemetry, and AWACS logs from start to finish. The loss was confirmed in classified Allied channels within 72 hours of the engagement. The denial deceived no one with access to the relevant intelligence. The denial was a strategic error because it locked the institutional response inside classified channels where it could not drive the kind of visible, publicly prioritized, properly funded adaptation that a transparent acknowledgement of loss would generate. A country that openly admits its premier interceptor cannot detect the threat it was built to counter mobilizes its defense industrial base, its research institutions, and its military doctrine community in a visible and coordinated way. A country that denies the lost files it in a classified drawer and issues a press statement. Russia chose the press statement. The United States Air Force, for its part, did not waste the information. The FY 2024 Air Force Posture Statement, released publicly in March 2023, includes language about enhanced Arctic deterrence posture and improved beyond visual range engagement protocols for contested Arctic environments. The FY 2024 National Defense Authorization Act contains a $340 million allocation for F-22 avionics and weapons integration upgrades specifically, described as supporting Arctic theater operational requirements. A classified acquisition program designated Arctic Sword, referenced by that name, in unclassified procurement solicitation documents, though its specific capabilities are not described in any open-source material, carries a contract start date of March 15, 2022. That is 29 days after the Bering Sea engagement. The timeline is suggestive. NORAD intercept data available through Freedom of Information Act releases from 2024 shows a significant change in Russian MiG-31 activity near the Alaskan Adiz in the months following February 14, 2022. 0 MiG-31 contacts within 100 miles of the Adiz boundary are recorded between mid-February and late October 2022, an 8-month gap with no precedent in the NORAD data, going back to the Foxhound's introduction to Arctic operations. When Foxhound activity resumed in November 2022, the operational profile had been revised. Aircraft operated in pairs rather than 4 ship formations. Standoff distances from the Adiz boundary were greater. Radar emissions management was more careful. Arctic Mirror detected a significant reduction in Zaslon-AM active emissions compared to pre-February 14, the baseline levels, consistent with instructions to reduce the passive electromagnetic signature that the Raptors ALR-94 had used to cue the APG-77 during the engagement. The Russians had adapted their tactics. The underlying physics had not changed. Most people assume that high-value targets in modern warfare are protected by active defense systems, missiles, jamming, fighter cover. What the Bering Sea engagement demonstrated is that against a fifth-generation threat, those active defenses become unreliable as the detection layer collapses. You cannot protect what you cannot find, and you cannot find what you cannot detect. The F-22 stealth does not just make it harder to shoot down, it removes the warning time that makes every other defensive measure possible. Will this dynamic change as Russia fields more Su-57 Felon aircraft with the NO-36 Bielka IASA radar? The Bielka represents a genuine generational improvement over the Zaslon-AM in measured performance parameters. But as of 2025, the operational Su-57 fleet consists of approximately 22 confirmed aircraft against a global F-22 fleet of 186 Raptors and an F-35 fleet across all variants exceeding 700 aircraft. The numbers matter as much as the technology. Individual platform improvements do not close a numerical gap of that magnitude. Comment: we're curious where you think fifth-generation air power dominance goes from here. Is it an enduring advantage? Or does sensor technology eventually close the detection gap? Drop your analysis below. We read every response. Dagger 1 and Dagger 2 landed at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson at 8:21 a.m. Alaska Standard Time on February 14, 2022. They were met on the flight line by the 525th Fighter Squadron commander, taxied to a secure hardened aircraft shelter, and escorted directly to a classified debrief suite. Their aircraft were impounded for forensic data recovery. Their cockpit voice recorders and mission data recorders were removed and transported to NSA's Pacific Operations Facility in Hawaii on a dedicated, secure flight that departed Elmendorf at 11:45 a.m. the same day. Lieutenant Colonel Whitfield's promotion to full colonel was approved in June 2023. His promotion order contains no mention of combat action in the Pacific Theater. Under the rules governing classified engagement decorations, any awards associated with this mission would have been presented in a closed ceremony with no public announcement. The full text of any such awards, if they exist, remains classified. The Bering Sea engagement of February 14, 2022, will likely be studied in fighter tactics schools for decades. Not because of its scale, 2 aircraft, 4 minutes and 18 seconds, no American casualties. By historical measure, it was a minor engagement. Its significance is analytical and doctrinal, rather than strategic in the traditional sense. It confirmed what the physics had always predicted, that the radar cross-section advantage of a 5th-generation fighter against 4th-generation detection systems creates an asymmetry in detection probability severe enough to make the engagement geometrically one-sided before the first missile is fired. It demonstrated that the AIM-120D's two-way data link and Doppler discrimination capabilities allow it to prosecute a maneuvering target under realistic countermeasures deployment with high kill probability, and it provided the U.S. Air Force with classified operational data on F-22 performance in a live engagement against a real adversary, data that no simulation could have generated. The Arctic theater is not quiet. NORAD conducts over 100 intercepts per year against Russian military aircraft probing the Alaskan, ADIZ. The 525th Fighter Squadron at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson remains on alert. The Foxhounds are still flying. New variants of the MiG-31 are in development, and Russia's investment in Arctic basing infrastructure has continued to grow. But something changed over those frozen international waters at 65.2 degrees north and 168.1 degrees west at 6:57 a.m. on Valentine's Day 2022. 2 transponder signals went dark, 8 seconds apart, on a morning when the Bering Sea was invisible under cloud cover and the temperature was -19 on the ground at Elmendorf and -60 where the engagement happened. The pilots of the 525th know exactly what changed. The analysts at the Forsvarets Etterretningstjeneste facility in Kolsås know. The surviving pilots of Berkut 3 and Berkut 4, who landed at Anadyr 2 aircraft short of how they departed, know. 3 years and 3 months after it happened, buried under a classification that is now partly lifted, now you do too. If you want to understand the F-35's first confirmed combat engagements, intercepting ballistics missiles in the Middle East, in operational, conditions that revealed completely different aspects of 5th-generation performance than the Bering Sea fight, that breakdown is already live on this channel. The sensor fusion data from those engagements adds another layer to everything discussed here. Subscribe to Jet Supremacy. We cover the classified operations that shaped modern air power doctrine. And if this breakdown gave you something, leave a comment with your take on whether February 14, 2022 stabilized Arctic deterrence or set a precedent that made the region more dangerous. We will be back.